The following Appalachian Mountains horror story is real, disturbing, and should be used as a warning. The names and locations have been altered to protect the individuals involved. Viewer discretion is advised. Shelby Crane went into the Smoky Mountains with her fiancé of 7 years. She came out alone. He didn't get lost. 3 years ago, Shelby thought the hardest part of the trip would be keeping up with Hollis. She was wrong about that. She was wrong about a lot of things that week. But we'll get to that. Shelby Crane was 27 years old and had not missed a single day at the gym in 4 years. Not a rest day, not a sick day, not a holiday. She tracked every gram of protein she put in her body, hit every personal record on her programming board, and had outlasted every training partner who ever made the mistake of thinking they could keep her pace. She was, by every measurable standard, the most prepared person she knew. What she had never done was spend a night outside. Neither had Hollis Webb. Her fiancé was 29, built like someone had stacked a second person on top of a regular person, and carried himself with the specific confidence of a man who had never once stopped to consider that confidence alone cannot carry you through a mountain. They'd been engaged for 7 years, not married, engaged. 7 years is a long time to stand in the doorway of something without walking through it. But Shelby had stopped noticing the doorway the same way you stop noticing a crack in the ceiling. It's there every morning. You just stop looking up. The trip was Hollis's idea. 5 days on the Appalachian Trail through Great Smoky Mountains National Park. You translate gym strength to trail strength, he'd told her, like it was the equation he'd already solved. We've been training for this without even knowing it. She'd let that logic stand because she wanted it to be true. Their pack still had factory creases in the straps when they pulled into the Sugarlands Visitor Center parking lot off Newfound Gap Road. The Smokies pressed down around them the moment they stepped out of the car. Ridge after ridge going blue-gray into the distance, the air thick with old hemlock and something deeper underneath, something mineral and cold. Like the mountains exhaled a different atmosphere than the rest of the world. Beautiful, enormous, not even a little bit interested in them. Inside, the ranger behind the desk was a woman in her 50s, unhurried. The kind of unhurried that comes from answering the same questions for 20 years and still thinking the answers matter. She went through the orientation the same way. Stay on marked trails, pack out everything you pack in, don't approach wildlife, don't hike after dark. Then she leaned forward, just slightly, and her eyes found Shelby's, not Hollis's. Shelby's. "Do not leave the marked trail," she said. "Not for a shortcut, not for a view, not for any reason. If you get off trail out here without the experience to navigate, recovery gets very complicated, very fast. You understand me?" Shelby's throat tightened. She nodded. Her stomach was doing something she didn't have a word for. Not fear exactly. More like recognition. Like her body had already processed something her brain was still working on. Hollis was reading a rack of trail maps. He missed the whole thing. Outside at the trailhead, while they were adjusting their packs, Hollis went still. "Hold on," he said, and jogged toward a cluster of people standing near the bulletin board before Shelby could respond. 8, maybe 10 of them. Far enough away that their faces were just shapes. They stood in a loose circle, not talking to passers-by, not holding signs, not doing anything in particular. Just standing. Hollis walked straight into the circle like he'd been invited. Shelby watched from the trailhead. She couldn't hear a word. He came back 4 minutes later practically vibrating. A scavenger hunt, he said. 5 paperback books hidden along their exact route. tear a marked page from each one, bring all 5 back to the visitor center by end of day 3. The prize was a free cabin voucher, valid anywhere in the park system for a full year. "It's literally on our route," he said, pulling up a hand-drawn map on his phone. "We walk right past every single marker. Babe, free cabin." She looked back at the circle. They hadn't moved. They weren't watching. They weren't not watching either. They were just standing there the way furniture stands, present without being interested. Don't trust strangers at the trailhead. The ranger's voice was still fresh in her ears. "Who are they?" Shelby asked. "Does it matter?" She wanted to say yes. She said, "Okay." 20 minutes in, they found the first marker, a weathered paperback wedged under a cairn exactly where the hand-drawn map said it would be, still on the main trail, still perfectly legal. Hollis reached it first. He tore the page and pocketed it before Shelby took 2 more steps. She held out her hand. "I got it, don't stress," he said, cheerfully, easily, already walking. She stood there watching his back. It was a torn page from a paperback. There was no reason in the world it should matter who held it. So why wouldn't he let her see it? Day 1 was objectively beautiful, and that almost made it worse. The AT corridor through the Smokies delivered everything the brochures promised. Ridge views opening up through the tree line, cold creek crossings that numbed your boots for a quarter mile after, the fir forest going dark and cathedral quiet above 5,000 feet. Shelby's legs felt good. Her lungs felt good. The pack weight settled into her shoulders like a problem she already knew how to carry. Maybe Hollis was right. Maybe this did translate. She almost relaxed. Almost. The second marker was 3 miles in, tucked inside a split-bark chestnut tree at a trail junction near the Alum Cave trailhead. The moment it came into view, Hollis accelerated. Not a jog, just a subtle, deliberate lengthening of his stride. The way you move when you want something and don't want anyone to notice that you want it. By the time Shelby reached the tree, the page was already in his jacket pocket. "Can I see it?" she said. "Just to see it." "See what?" "The page. What are we even collecting?" "Pages. From what book?" "Does it matter? We've got 2 now." She tried a different angle. "How do we know we tore the right ones? What if they check?" "They won't check." "How do you know?" He kissed her on the temple and started walking. That night at camp, first night still on trail, fire small and warm, the Smokies going dark velvet around them. She tried one more time. "Just lay both pages out flat," she said. She wanted to see what they were building toward. He pulled out his sleeping bag and said, "Tomorrow," in a tone that meant the conversation was over. She lay awake watching the fire die down to orange coals. The man who used to text her a photo of every single meal he prepped, every Tupperware, every macro breakdown, unprompted, just because he wanted her to see. Didn't want her to look at a torn page from a hiking competition. The logic wouldn't close. She turned it over and over in her head, the way you press a bruise, looking for the edges of it. Outside the tent, something moved once through the underbrush, then went still. She told herself it was a deer. The hand-drawn map put marker 3.5 miles off the main trail. Cross country, back country, north face of the ridge above Alum Cave, through unmarked rhododendron thicket with no blazes, no path, no anything. Shelby read it twice and her stomach dropped straight to her boot soles. "We're not going off trail." She said it flat. No negotiation in it. The ranger's face was vivid in her memory, the way her eyes had found Shelby's specifically, not Hollis's, like she was passing something directly to her that she needed to keep. Hollis didn't argue, didn't wheedle, didn't make a case. He just started walking the feeder path, unhurried, no map check, weaving through the rhododendron like he knew exactly where the gaps were, like he'd done this stretch before. "Hollis, half a mile back on trail before dark. You have never been to these mountains. I studied the topo." She stood at the trailhead blaze, white paint on bark, solid and official, and watched his back disappear into the green. She could stay. She could sit on a rock and wait. She looked at the trail stretching ahead in both directions, empty. The trees pressing close on either side. No other hikers in either direction. The silence suddenly enormous. The specific terror of standing alone on an unfamiliar trail turned out to be worse than the general terror of following him off it. She followed. The trees closed behind them in less than 100 yards. The main trail vanished from view like it had never existed. The Smokies stopped being beautiful and started being enormous. And they did it quietly, without any drama, the way a room gets smaller when the lights go out. The ridge pressed down. The light dropped a full shade. Something shifted in Shelby's chest, a tightening that had nothing to do with exertion, nothing to do with lactic acid or heart rate, or any variable she knew how to measure. No amount of training prepares you for the specific feeling of realizing the ground beneath your feet is the only map you have. And the ground beneath your feet all looks exactly the same. They reached marker 3. Hollis tore the page without slowing down. Shelby didn't bother asking to see it. He said they'd make camp here. Getting back through the rhododendron in fading light was more dangerous than sleeping in the hollow and returning at first light. Reasonable. Logical. She hated how reasonable it sounded. Camp was genuinely, achingly beautiful. A small hollow in the ridge, tucked below the tree line. Fireflies drifting up through the fern layer in slow green pulses. The ridgeline going from purple to black above them, while the fire caught and the smell of wood smoke mixed with the cold mineral air. Shelby built the fire. Hollis set up the tent. They ate from their packs, and she let herself be almost okay, because being here with him had always meant something, and 7 years was a long time, and they'd come back in summer when they knew what they were doing, and the cabin would be waiting. She asked to see the pages, all 3 laid out flat, just so she knew what they were building. "Tomorrow," he said, rolled over. His breathing evened out in under 2 minutes, the deep, immediate sleep of someone with nothing unresolved. She stared at the tent roof. Somewhere in the dark above the hollow, something stepped once through the underbrush, heavier than a deer, deliberate in a way that felt less like an animal passing through and more like something that had stopped to listen. And then the forest went absolutely silent. No insects, no frogs, nothing. Just the fire breathing. She told herself it was nothing. She had been telling herself that a lot today. The tent walls were bright with early light. That particular mountain silence pressed in from all sides, not peaceful, absolute. The kind where the absence of sound is itself a sound, where the quiet has weight and texture, and you can feel it sitting on your chest. Shelby's hand moved to the sleeping bag beside her before her eyes opened. Flat. Cold. She sat up. Hollis's sleeping bag was laid neat against the tent floor, smoothed down, no wrinkles, the way you'd fold something before putting it away. No person inside it. His pack was gone. His boots were gone. His trekking poles gone. Everything of hers was exactly where she'd left it. Everything of his was simply not there anymore. The way a tooth is not there after an extraction. The space where it was somehow louder than the thing itself had ever been. 2 boot prints pressed into the soft earth of the tent floor, pointing toward the door. The zipper was open. She unzipped the tent and stepped into the hollow. empty. Fire ring cold and ash gray. Not the gray of a fire that went out an hour ago, but the pale, dusty gray of a fire that had been dead for a long time. She called his name. The Smokies swallowed it completely. No echo, no response, just the sound of her own voice stopping. Hollis. Nothing. Hollis. The hollow gave her nothing back. Her phone showed one bar of service that disappeared the moment she tried to open the Maps app. The sky above the canopy was a sealed gray lid. No sun, no direction, no reference point. She turned in a slow circle. The hollow had 5 paths leading out of it. Animal trails, feeder paths, gaps in the rhododendron, and in the flat gray morning light, they looked absolutely identical. She had no idea which one they'd come in on. She hadn't paid attention. She'd been following him and she hadn't paid attention, and now there was no him to follow. She was in the backcountry of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, a half-mile off the AT alone. With no compass, no navigation experience, a pack she'd never had to rely on for actual survival, and a fiancé who was simply not here. She called his name one more time, not because she thought he'd answer, just to hear something human in all that quiet. Staying was not a decision. It was a different kind of dying. She picked the path that looked most traveled and started walking. The Smokies earned their villain status here, and they were not dramatic about it. No howling wind, no sudden storm, no cliff edge appearing out of nowhere. Just the mountain doing what it had always done, presenting the same tree, the same ridge angle, the same tangle of rhododendron over and over and over, until a person walking confidently in a straight line realized she'd been circling for 40 minutes. Her gym legs were strong. The terrain didn't care. Every downhill became a ravine. Every ravine required a decision. Every decision looked exactly as wrong as the last one. She was crying by the time she said it out loud. Not sobbing, just tears running without permission, her body processing what her brain was still refusing to fully name. The words came out flat, spoken to no one, to the trees, to the gray lid of sky above the canopy. He left. Not got separated. Not went for water. Not got turned around. Left. The tent was still staked. He hadn't woken her. The fire had been dead for hours before she opened her eyes, which meant he was gone before midnight, which meant he lay beside her in the dark and waited, listening to her breathing slow. And then he got up and he left. Quietly, carefully, with everything of his and nothing of hers, into the back country of the Smokies in the middle of the night. She thought about the pages, why he wouldn't show her, what was on them, whether there was anything on them at all. Her stomach turned over. She stopped walking, breathed, did what she always did when the feeling got too large. She stopped feeling and started solving. She was on a north-facing ridge. The hollow had been below the tree line. Water runs downhill, and downhill leads to creek beds, and creek beds in the Smokies eventually lead to trail crossings. She had 2 liters of water, 2 days of food, and a body that had been trained to carry heavy loads across difficult terrain. She was not going to die out here. She started walking again. Her boot caught a root. The ground came up fast, knee driving into packed earth, both palms catching herself, chin stopping 2 inches from a rock. She lay there for a moment on the forest floor, cheek against the cold soil, the smell of it filling her nose. Wet leaves and minerals and something ancient underneath, the specific smell of ground that has been ground for a very long time and will be ground long after she is not a concern of anyone's. She got up, kept walking. An hour later, maybe more, time had gone strange and soft at the edges. A white blaze appeared on a tree trunk ahead of her. She stopped. walked toward it slowly, like it might disappear, pressed both palms flat against the bark and stood there. The AT white blaze. Official. Real. She was back on trail. She stood at that tree and just breathed, both hands on the bark, forehead almost touching the wood, and let the relief move through her like something physical. When she looked down, something in the mud at the base of the trail junction caught her eye. A torn page, face up. Waterlogged at the edges but legible. Paperback font, fiction, mid-sentence. She crouched. The handwriting in the margin was not Hollis's, not even close. It was smaller, cramped, pressed hard into the paper like the pen had been gripped too tight. She didn't recognize it. She had never seen it before. Pressed into the soft mud beside it, overlapping the trail edge, sunk deep, the mud around it still fresh and unsettled, was a boot print. Large, deep tread. Larger than Hollis's, larger than hers. Recent, very recent. The mud around it hadn't had time to relax back into itself. She stood up slowly, picked up her pace, did not look back. The Sugarland's visitor center roof broke through the tree line like an answer to a prayer she hadn't known she was saying. Red shingles against a gray sky. The most beautiful color she had ever seen in her entire life. A quarter mile. She could see the parking lot. She could see cars, actual people, actual pavement, and her chest did something complicated and large that she pushed straight back down because she was not there yet, and the Smokies had already taught her today what it cost to assume. She kept moving. The route came out of nowhere. Her right ankle folded on it, full body weight, no warning, the pack slamming her momentum forward and down into the gravel path, her knee opening hard on a rock. The world tilted sideways, gravel against her cheek. The visitor center roof visible through the tree line, right there, close enough to shout at. She tried to stand. Her ankle buckled and sent a white bolt of pain straight up her leg that emptied her lungs completely. Not broken. She knew broken. This was a roll. Bad, deep, the joint screaming at a volume she couldn't argue with. She made it to one knee, looked at the roof, looked at her leg, looked at the roof again. 3 seconds on one knee that felt like considerably longer. Get up. She got up. A day hiker came around the bend 2 minutes later. A woman, middle-aged, trekking poles. The calm, unhurried competence of someone who had been on this trail many times and was not afraid of it. She took one look at Shelby, muddy, pale, pack askew, one hand braced against a tree, and didn't ask a single unnecessary question. Can you walk? Yes. Okay. She got under Shelby's arm without being asked. They walked. The small talk had burned out of Shelby miles ago, and the woman seemed to understand that because she didn't attempt any. Just her arm, steady and matter-of-fact, and the sound of 4 boots on gravel, and the visitor center getting larger with every step. The door opened. The same ranger from check-in was behind the desk. She took one look at Shelby, muddy, pale, limping, dried tear tracks cutting clean lines through the dirt on both cheeks, and came around the desk without a word. Not what happened, not are you okay, not a single syllable of the preamble people use when they need a moment to decide how concerned to be. She just came around the desk and was there, standing beside her. And that simple physical fact, another person, present, on her side of the counter, broke something open in Shelby's chest that she immediately locked back down. The ranger wrapped an emergency blanket around her shoulders, radioed the backcountry search and rescue team, pulled a chair over and sat beside her, not across a desk from her, beside her, while she made the call. She didn't say "I told you so," not once, not even close. Shelby had to say the words out loud. That was the part she hadn't prepared for. She'd spent the last 2 hours solving navigation, terrain, pace, injury management. And now the solving was over, and all that was left was the saying of it, and saying it out loud in a warm room to a person who was writing things down, made it real, in a way the cold hollow and the empty sleeping bag and the dead fire had somehow not quite managed. "My fiancé left," she said. "I think he left on purpose." It sounded insane when she said it. She heard it the way a stranger would hear it, and braced herself for the pause, the careful recalibration, the gentle suggestions about what else might have happened. The ranger's face didn't change. She had heard this before. That was somehow worse than the disbelief would have been. The search team reached the campsite before last light. They radioed back, a clean scene report. Tent staked and standing. Food bag still on the bear line. Fire ring cold. Hollis's boot prints tracked northeast into the backcountry, away from the main trail, away from all 5 marker locations on the hand-drawn map, away from every exit point in the park. Steady stride. No stumbling. No signs of distress. No signs of injury. No signs of anything except a man walking deliberately away from something he had decided to leave. The prints tracked northeast until the forest floor hardened into rock shelf. And then nothing. The ground stopped taking impressions, and Hollis Webb stopped existing in any way the search team could follow. They drove her to her car as the last light left the sky. She sat in the parking lot until the search team's headlights disappeared up the road. Then she started the engine and drove 4 hours back through the dark without the radio on, without stopping, without crying. The white dashes of the highway coming at her one after another in the headlights, like a metronome counting out something she didn't have a name for yet. She turned the key in the apartment door. The lock opened. Inside, quiet. His key was on the kitchen counter, centered, not dropped, placed. The specific placement of something set down with intention. She went to the bedroom. His side of the closet was empty, not packed in a rush, organized. Hangers evenly spaced on the rod. A clean rectangular gap on the shelf where his duffel bag used to live. The shelf itself dust-free in the shape of it. The outline of something that had been there a long time and was now simply gone. This was done before the trip. He had packed, arranged what remained, and gone on the hike. She stood in front of the closet for a long time. The scavenger hunt. The hand-drawn map. The group standing in their circle at the trailhead bulletin board. 8 or 10 of them, faces indistinct from 30 feet away, not watching, not watching. She had never gotten a single name, never seen a sign-up sheet, never seen anyone in a ranger uniform organizing a competition, never thought to ask who exactly was handing out free cabin vouchers to strangers at a trailhead. There was no competition. There was no scavenger hunt. Whether he'd had another plan before he spotted that circle of people, whether the Alpine divorce was always the destination and the game was just the road he happened to find, she would never know. The group had given him a reason to get her off the trail, and he had taken it in under 4 minutes standing 30 feet away from her, and she had stood at the trailhead and watched and not walked over, and not asked a single question. She thought about the boot print in the mud by the trail junction, the cramped handwriting in the margin of the page she'd never seen before, the thing that had moved through the underbrush outside the tent on the first night and gone still. She thought about it for exactly as long as she could stand to. Then she stopped. Those questions had no floors. She already knew what happened when you stepped off solid ground without knowing what was underneath. 3 years ago, she was alone. That was the devastation of it. She didn't cry in the parking lot. Didn't cry on the 4-hour drive home. Didn't cry when she found the key centered on the counter, like a period at the end of a sentence he'd been writing for a long time. She scrubbed the bathroom instead. Every surface, twice, 4 hours, because the bathroom was something she could complete, and completion was the only thing her brain could hold without it slipping. At 2 a.m., she sat on the bathroom floor with her back against the tub. A coffee mug tipped off the sink edge and shattered on the tile in front of her. And that was the thing that opened it up. Not the empty closet, not the placed key. A coffee mug. She didn't cry for Hollis. She cried for 7 years of being the most prepared person in every room, except the ones that mattered. The ring is still in the kitchen junk drawer. Not displayed. Not thrown away. Just in the drawer where dead batteries and expired coupons go. Where things land when they used to mean something and now just take up space. She still doesn't know who those people were. The ones in the circle. She was 30 feet away the whole time and never walked over. Never asked. The boot print in the mud. The handwriting she didn't recognize. Those questions have no floors, and she stopped dropping into them a long time ago. But some nights she still reaches for the left side of the bed before she's fully awake. And every single time it's cold. The Great Smoky Mountains are the most visited national park in the United States. 12 million people walk those trails every year. Most of them are back out by sundown. The rangers at Sugarlands will tell you the same thing they have always told you. The mountain doesn't care how strong you are. It only cares how honest you are. With it, and with yourself. What happened to Shelby has a name, though most people have never heard it. Alpine divorce. The act of abandoning a romantic partner in a remote, high-risk outdoor setting. A place where the person left behind has no easy way home. Sometimes it happens in the heat of a fight. Sometimes, like with Hollis, it is something colder. A decision made before the first boot ever hit the trail, carried the whole way in like gear. Shelby trained for every variable she could measure. What she couldn't train for was the variable standing right beside her, the one with 7 years of practice making himself feel like solid ground. The Smokies didn't take anything from her that she hadn't already been quietly losing. She just had to go off trail to find out. Now she is alone. That's the clarity of it. If you would like to hear more Appalachian Mountains horror stories, click here. I'm the Shadow Teller. Stay safe in the dark.